The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. See another person signing in, so I'll give them another moment. All right. Well, we have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the Intermediate Report Designer Training Webinar, formerly known as AutoTag, now Report Designer. Today is Wednesday, September 19th, 2018. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios. I've been here for just about a year now. Maybe you've interacted with me already through help desk tickets. Well, welcome everyone. You may have noticed that when you logged into GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. The arrow that you see on the screen is pointing to the raise your hand icon. If any time during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or to notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions and chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your questions immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer questions, but I'll look now and again to see if anything has been raised. And one question, a comment, good morning, so hello to you as well. Okay, again, this is the Intermediate Report Designer Training Webinar. We're assuming that you've built some templates. They could have been very simple templates, that you've installed AutoTag, that you know how to use the tags, that you know how to connect to your data sources. You know enough about Report Designer to get you started. And maybe you've joined us last week for the basic Report Designer training webinar. To give you an idea of the kind of machine I'm working on today, I'm using a Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. I'm also using Office 2016, also 64-bit. And the version of Report Designer that I'm using is 15.2.369.0. And you can always download the latest versions from our download webpage. I believe we'll be having a new version coming out shortly, I think Friday or shortly after that. So always check in on that to see if we've released the latest version. Okay, I want to give a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. I'll go over some advanced features for the ForEach Tag. We'll discuss conditional formatting, covering two types of conditional formatting. One where we're showing and hiding content using Report Designer tags, and a second type that formats output based on conditions. We'll go over the equation editor. Here, I'll show you how to add a sum function to a template. We'll discuss the if and switch tags and what the differences are. I'll show you an example of the import tag. And of course, there's the Q&A session at the very end. So for the ForEach tag, let's review what it actually does. It does three things. First, it grabs a set of data, any set of data that you want to pull from your data source. Second, it loops through that set of data that you selected to work with. And third, it repeats all the elements between the tags. For today, I'll show you the importance of where to place the beginning and ending for each tags and show you the results of placing these tags in different ways. We'll also get into grouping data or nesting for each tags, and I'll show you how to group your data with some nested for each tag. Okay, we're now going to move away from the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a Word document. All right, to begin with, let's go ahead and click on this Auto Tag Manager tab. And I want to talk about some samples. I'm going to click on this samples button right here. And that opens up our Getting Started guide. And down here in the samples template, under the additional section, we're going to be talking about the tag tutorials for SQL. We have tag tutorials for XML. They're the second greatest use. We don't quite have them for the JSON yet. It's something we're building, but today we'll be focused on tag tutorials SQL. So we're going to begin with going over the ForEach tag, and as we have samples for every tag that you can utilize in the template, we have a sample template right here for the ForEach tag. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And to begin with, we're going to focus on this first sample right here. It is possible to use the ForEach tag without a table. Yes, it is, as you can see here. And just a little bit beneath it, you can also see ForEach tag with a table, maybe a more common way that you've seen ForEach tags already. But I want to point out a couple of things here in this example. The first thing is where you place these beginning and ending ForEach tags. The second thing is I want to explain why the placement is important when you loop through your data. So before we do anything else, let's go ahead and select this ForEach tag and preview just to see the data that we're working with. I'm going to go up here to the Auto Tag tab, click on the Preview button. Okay, and here we're just returning a bunch of columns from the category table. We got the category ID, the category name, description, pictures. Seeing this table used a lot last week in the basic training. Okay, so what is this alt tag that's right next to the ForEach tag going to be returning? So let's go ahead and select it and preview that as well. Okay, and here we're just pulling the category IDs from the categories table. And here we just have a list of numbers. And now what's that second alt tag doing? Go ahead and select it, click preview. Okay, here we're pulling the category name from the category table. So here we have beverages, condiments, confections. We've seen this before. And then we have our end for each tag right below it, right here. All right, so let's go ahead and show you what this output is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and click Output, generate it here. Split the screen. Over here on the left is our template, and over here on the right is now our output. All right, so for our example, here we go. So you'll notice that we're just showing you here in the output a 1, which is the category ID, a dash, and then the category name. And each one of these categories are ending up on a separate line, as you can see here. How is that actually happening? Why is Report Designer putting this output on a separate line? Let's go back to the template. And the reason why is because we added this end for each on the very next line after this alt tag. So there's nothing after this alt tag, all this white space. Then down here on the next line, we have our ending for each tag. So you can see this more clearly. I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to turn on Show High Formatting. So right here, after this last alt tag, is this paragraph marker. So we're providing the carriage return after this alt tag, so we can add the end for each just below it. What if we were to take away this carriage return? Let's remove it so we can place the end for each tag right after the final alt tag. Let's go ahead and close this, generate new output just to see what it will look like now. All right, now, as you can see, our output looks very different. Immediately after our first record, the category ID dash and category name, starts the second record right here with the number 2. There isn't even a space. You can see this over here in the template that after the alt tag, we now just have the end for each. So it's telling Report Designer to go back and display the next category ID dash and category name right after each record. So on and so on. Third record, fourth record. And then when it gets to the right margin, it just goes on to the next line and carries on. And if this list was long enough, it would carry on across the page as well as down the page. And when it reaches the end of the page, it would continue on to the next page as well. So this is why it's lining up on the same exact line for each one of these categories, because we are telling it after this alt tag to go back and display the next alt tag. Go ahead and change this back. So this is why it's important where you place the end for each tag. Everything between the for each tag and this end for each tag are being repeated each time it iterates through the loop. And here we have a paragraph marker that is iterating as it goes through the list. I'm going to close the example for a moment. Let's go ahead and expand this. Before we move on to another example, I'd like to point out the tag tree button for you. So in here in the auto tag tab over here on the left is the tag tree button. I'll click that. And this is very helpful, a very good tool, especially when you're reviewing templates that you haven't seen before, as it lets you see all the tags that have been set up in this table, in this template. So right now, there's a bunch of ForEach tags. We can expand those, and then within them is some more alt tags. And these are all the tags right here that relate to the body of the template. If we had tags within the headers or the footers, these would display differently. You would see, instead of just main story, you would see headers and footers. But since we only have tags in this template in the body, that's why we only have the main story right here. But for this next example, let's go. We're going to be focusing on this last ForEach tag right here. So to help you out when you're trying to locate a specific tag within the template, you can always come over here to the tag tree and double click any tag. And when you do, it'll bring you directly to that where that tag is in the template. So when I double clicked on that customers loop, it brought me all the way down here to the customers loop, which you can see is at the end of the template. So it helps when you've never seen a tag before and to find out where it's located. So I want to expand this customers loop over here a little further and just discuss its makeup. So here, the customers loop, we have, this is our outer loop. And then we have another ForEach tag within this, and this is our inner loop. And this one is connected to our customer loop. And this is where we'll be talking about grouping. But we also have a couple other tags here in this section. We have a company name, alt tag. We have another alt tag, which is in this inner ForEach loop. We have an ending ForEach tag, which relates to this inner ForEach loop. And then we have another end ForEach tag, which relates to this outer loop or this customers loop. Now, just beneath this is this tag properties section. Normally, you can, when you click on an entry here, it will not only bring you to that place in the template, but it'll show you down here a quick snapshot of that tag's properties. So here you would normally be able to see the queries and the properties associated with this tag. Unfortunately, due to the webinar, that area is blanked out. It's only white here. But I was using this earlier today, and outside the webinar, if you click on one of these, this window will open up and work for you. But sorry, it's something to do with the webinar. But this is a nice, quick, handy way to get a snapshot. If the query's along, it might be a little difficult to read in this one, but you can always see the properties that you set up. So let's get back to the sample over here. So what is going on? So we have this outer ForEach tag, this customer loop, and we want to group some data based on this company name. So let's go ahead and preview the customer loop to see what it's returning. So here, it just looks to be returning 4 records, which are the customer ID and the company name. Okay. Next thing, between this beginning and ending ForEach tag is our company name alt tag. And again, you can always tell the type of tags by looking at the properties up here. Alt tag right now, it's a ForEach tag when I click on one. So what is this company name alt tag returning? And as the name states, it's just returning the company names, a bunch of names, company names that begin with an A. Okay, Next, we have another ForEach tag right here. And this is our inner ForEach tag. So let's preview it to see what it's returning. So here it's just returning all of the orders that pertain to this specific ALFKI customer ID. So let's say that you have a list of company names that you want to see all their orders for as it goes through the list. This is exactly what we're returning here, as well as a lot of other data. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at this alt tag, see what it's returning. And all it's returning is just the order ID, even though we brought in a lot more information when we previewed that in ForEach tag. All it looks like we're going to be doing is just displaying the order ID. So now let's go ahead and take a look at how this will look in the output. So I'm going to generate output. Yes, to save. Split the screen. And close this tag tree to give us a little more space. And now I'm going to scroll all the way down to our example. Oh, just past it. Here we go. All right. So here we have our loop and our template right here. And over here on the right, you can see the results of that loop. So here we have the number 1, the company name, and all the orders that are associated with that company name right here. Then the loop iterates and displays the next company name, its orders, and so on. So now let's take a look at that number 1 right here in the list. See how it's repeating the number 1 for each of these companies? Here's where we're grouping orders under specific company names. Let's take a little closer look at this. I'm going to close the output. So how do we actually tie this inner ForEach loop to this customer outer ForEach loop? So with this selected right here, I want to point out up here in the ForEach tag properties that this ForEach tag has a variable name of var name 10. And if you remember from last week, the variable name is just what Report Designer uses to identify this ForEach loop. So let's remember var name 10. Okay, now let's go ahead and select this inner ForEach loop right here. And I'm going to come up here and click on the wizard button. And when I do that, it opens up our SQL wizard. And here is the columns that are being returned from that inner ForEach loop. We don't need to focus on that right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and minimize that. So how do we actually tie this inner ForEach tag with this outer ForEach tag? And we do this through the filter section right here. And you can see that it's already set up for us. So what we're doing is we're collecting the customer ID from the orders table. You can see right here. And we're setting that equal to the value of var name 10. And if you remember, var name 10 is just the variable name for this customer loop. And we're setting that equal to the value of the customer ID from var name 10. So having the customer ID in this orders table equal to the customer ID of that var name 10, we can utilize the similar keys and connect it, this inner loop to the outer loop. Now, I'm going to click on this var name 10, the outer loop, and expand this option right here for the var name 10. As this is what we could have been connecting to, and the var name 10 is the loop when right now we are only set up to connect to the customer ID and company name. And of course, we're using the customer ID. Now, this is where you could select those variables. And so you'll notice over here in the right, in the data preview pane, that this is the first customer ID and all the orders that pertain to that customer ID. So this is how you connect the inner ForEach loop, this var name 10 customer ID, to the outer ForEach loop, the orders customer ID. Okay. So I'm going to generate the output one more time. Okay. So I want to explain what is actually happening when we generate the output with the engine. And each report designer has a small .NET engine built into it. So what's actually happening is our engine is completely stripping out the data from your template, collecting that data, and then rebuilding from scratch, from top down, everything that's in your template. It shows you the data that you wanted and it displays how you formatted, and it displays how you formatted it within your template. So what's happening here in our example is Report Designer is collecting all of the data from the customer loop and all of the data within this inner ForEach loop, ties it together, and when it produces the output, it says, okay, what's after this customer loop? And the first thing that it comes across is this number list and the company name. Then it sees this inner ForEach loop, so it grabs all that data and displays the alt tag for that inner loop. And it'll do this for all the order IDs within this inner loop for this company name. It'll loop through, showing everything between this beginning and ending ForEach tag, which is just the in this inner loop, it's just the order ID. And then when it's displayed an order ID, it'll go to the next line, keep on displaying it. When it comes to the end, it'll go back through this end ForEach, go back to the beginning of the customer loop, and grab the next company name record, where it will then continue on looping through its order IDs, displaying it till it reaches its inner ForEach loop, go the outer end ForEach loop tag, and then continue on until all the records have been displayed. So this just gives you an idea of how our engine is tearing down your template and rebuilding it from scratch after pulling in your data from your data source. So this is how you group your data using nested ForEach loops. Okay, next thing I'd like to go over before leaving this ForEach tag sample is on this page above, right there. So we've been creating ForEach tags using row-based formatting. We're now going to focus on how to create ForEach tags using column-based formatting. So right here, the ForEach tag can be used for column major expansion. So let's show you how to do this. So there are three things that are different when you want to create columns instead of rows. This example up above right here is typical when creating a row-based ForEach tag. Here we have our ForEach tag, then a bunch of alt tags that relate to the different columns. And then outside of the table, we have our ForEach tag. And this is typically what you want to do. But in this next example right here, the column-based example, our ForEach tag is within the table. So let's go ahead and preview this ForEach tag to see what we're working with. And here, again, this is our categories table with our 4 columns that we're getting used to seeing: category ID, category name, description, and picture. Okay, so what is this alt tag displaying from that categories table? Let's preview it. And this alt tag is just going to be displaying the category name here: beverages, condiments, and so forth. So instead of creating a list top down of the category name, in this example right here, we're going to create columns left to right across the page. So let's go ahead and take a look at the output to see what this looks like. Okay, I'm going to scroll down to our column-based expansion. Okay, right here. So instead of going top down, like you see here in this table, here we're going left to right, expanding the table, creating new columns as we process additional records through the ForEach tag. So back to the template here. Normally, when you place the ForEach tag within the table, it should create a blank row down here at the very end of the list, but we're not seeing that blank row right here in our output. And let me show you why that is. Let's go ahead and close this and this column expansion output for the moment. So there's a couple of ways to edit a tag. You can either double click the tag or you can click the edit tag button. And I'm going to go ahead and use that edit tag button to open up this ending for each tag. So with that selected, I'm going to go up here and click on edit tag. So the end for each tag is not used to query anything. It's just used to tell auto tag when to stop looping through the data and repeating the elements. So we don't see anything here in the queries tab. There is also the properties tab for the ForEach. And there is a property that I want to point out, and that's this delete row property right here. And this is currently set to true. And this is why we're not showing that last blank row in our output, because right here, delete row is equal to true. Suppress this row on output. Now, if I were to turn this off, just by double clicking it and saving the tag, what's our output now going to look like? Click output. Yes, to save. Split the screen. And now when we scroll down to our sample, you can see we have the blank row here. Before we didn't have this blank row, but now we do because we turned that property, the delete row property for this end for each tag to false. Okay, and now the last thing that you need to do for column-based expansion is to change the property value for the ForEach tag to columns instead of rows. So this time, I'm gonna double click this ForEach tag. So let me close this just so it's a little bigger to see. Okay. So what I would normally say here is that this window is a bit more robust than what you've seen in the tag editor, but we, due to the webinar, wasn't able to see it. But here we have our query and our properties. Up here, we have a preview button, and if I go ahead and click on this, you can see the results of our query right here. There's a wizard button right next to it, just like the button on your auto tag tab. This is how you can access your SQL wizard. There's an equation button right next to that, which I'll show you a little later, that adds an equation for a tag. And then there's the next and previous buttons, which actually take you to those respective tags without leaving the tag editor. And then over here on the left, just like in the data bin, here's all our table views and stored procedures that we have access to. Okay, right here on the right in this query window. Now your query window is probably white. If you click within that window, if you right click within it, there's this color scheme option. And I'm using base 16 Ocean Dark for this webinar. What is normal is that plain option. So your query window may look a little different. I want to click on this Properties tab. And this is where we set our column-based expansion. Now, there's a bunch of different properties. There's some advanced properties. There's some standard properties. But I'm going to focus right now on this order attribute right here. And it's currently set to column. And this is how we expand the ForEach tag. So I'm going to click this drop down, and you have a couple of different options for order. You have legacy, and this is what is used by default. Legacy isn't much more than row. It's just the original way that we built the tab. Next is the row attribute, and that just does a little more. If you want to delete a row within your end for each tag, you'll have to use this option. In our wiki page, there's more information on how legacy is different from row. But since we're expanding not by rows, but by columns, we'll want to make sure columns is set for order. Okay, with columns set, I'll go ahead and save it. And with that setup, you can see here how we get the column expansion. Still have this extra blank row. Let's go ahead and remove that. So let's go back to the end for each, double click it, go to properties, turn that back to true, save it. Now when we click the output, it'll be back to normal how we initially saw it. column expansion going across the page with no blank row. So those are the three things to keep in mind when setting up for column-based expansion. First thing is to make sure that your ForEach tag is set to column, that its order is set to column, that the end ForEach tag is within the table, and that you have the delete row attribute for the end ForEach tag set to true. Okay. Let's go back to the slides for a little bit. Make sure we're covering everything. So we talked about legacy row, columns, those different types of ForEach tags. We talked about the delete row attribute, which does delete the row where the end ForEach tag is placed. Okay, well, we have a little over 50 equation of functions available for you to use. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of them right now. I have a sample template that I'm bringing up. We're going to discuss. Opened on my other screen, so let me drag it in. So here, we're going to add a sum function to this table so that we can sum up the sales amount of all the salespeople. This is obviously looks like a sales table. We have salespeople, calls, sales amount. So before we do anything, let's just take a look at this sales loop. Let's see the data that it is returning. Let's go ahead and preview, auto tag and preview. And here for the sales loop, we're just going to be returning the salesperson, call num, leads generated, sales amount. It's very similar to what we are displaying right here in the table. Okay, but before we actually add that sum feature, I want to show you how to display or conditionally format text to have it display in red for those salespeople that are not meeting a specific quota. So I'm going to double click on this sales amount alt tag to open up the tag editor. I'm going to expand this var1, and this var1 is just relating to our sales loop and with all the columns that it contains. Click on this properties tab. And down here in the tag section, there's this condition right here. I'll expand it just so you can see it a little better. And as you can see, we already have an equation set up for you. So I'm going to click on this ellipsis over here at the end of the line. And this opens up our conditional formatting rule manager. Okay, so whenever you add an equation or whenever you want to evaluate data, you want to begin with an equal sign, as you see right here. After that is a $, squiggly black bracket, var name 1 for our sales loop. And then we're going to be using the sales amount. And we're checking if that sales amount is less than 8,000. So here, now that we have our equation built, now that it's already built for us, we'll want to set a format so that we can display it in a certain way. Now, if I know the formatting code, I can add that syntax right here in the field, or I can click on this wizard button, and this opens up our format options here. You can italicize, bold, underline, strike through the text. You can also change the text color, its background color. Since we're working with tables, also have the cell option. And here you can format the the border, the line style, the line color, the cell alignment, the cell color, the alignment. But since all we want to do right now is just change the color of the text to red, here we have our format entered in right here. This is the hex code for the color red. Unfortunately, we don't have a color palette right now. That's something that we want to add as an option. But for now, you would need to enter in your hex code for the color. And you can Google that, or maybe your marketing team has the hex colors of the company, of your company colors. So since we just want to display in red, this is exactly what we want. I'm going to click OK. And this is all we want to do here is show text in red for those sales amounts that are greater than 8,000. If I wanted to, I could create another rule right here, or delete one as necessary, but this is all we want. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. As you can see, it's populated here. I'm going to save the tag. And to show you what the output looks like, generate it. Okay, we can turn off the show high formatting up here. All right, and as you can see in our output, any sales amount that is less than $8,000 are now displayed in red. Any over 8,000 are displayed in our normal black color. So this is just one way to conditionally format an alt tag for output. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add a sum function to this template. So what if we wanted to just total the sales amount within this table? Well, to do that, we'll need to create a row underneath our table. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this ending ForEach tag, select it and click delete. I'm going to add another row by clicking on this plus button. So now I'm going to do what I told you earlier not to do when it comes to row-based templates. And this is a row-based template as we're moving from top to down. And what we're going to do now is add the end ForEach tag inside the table. So I'm going to place my cursor right here in the table, go up to the tags, and add an end ForEach tag. Now we're going to make a total, so let's go ahead and give it a label over here. So we know what that value is. Call it total. Let's go ahead and format that so it stands out a little. Let's bold it. And let's also right align it. Keep it close to our total that we'll be adding. Okay, now we want to display that total, so we need to add an alt tag. Go back to the auto tag tab, click on the tags, select alt. Okay, now with our alt tag set up in our sales amount, I'm going to go ahead and double click it to open up the tag editor again. And this time, I'm going to go ahead and click on this equation button. And this opens up our insert function window. Here we have a bunch of categories that you can select from. We have date and time, math and trig, statistical, database, text, logical, so forth. We're going to go ahead and click on math and trig as we're looking for the sum. When we do that, it condenses this list. And these are just the functions that relate to this category in alphabetical order. I'm going to scroll down here to our sum function. And when you click on the functions, you may notice down here that it gives you a little description of that function. So the sum function will add all the numbers in a range of values. That's exactly what we're looking to have done. Okay, I'm going to go click on the OK. And this will open up the functions argument window. And here's our sum equation right here. Remember, we always start with the equal sign to evaluate, which it has done for us. And then here's our sum function with nothing between the parentheses. So let's add to this equation. So what are we gonna sum up? If we knew what we wanted to sum up, we could enter that value right here in the number 1 field. Or we can click on this wizard button and it opens up our SQL wizard. Expand the tables and I'll expand the sales table as well. So we want to take all the sales amounts and total it up. To do that, all you need to do is drag the value that you want to sum up to this column section right here in the middle. And as you can see over here in the data preview, we now have our sales amount, exactly what we want to sum up. So that's all you need to do to populate the number field, is just drag what you want into the columns. When we click OK, here you'll notice now to the right of this number 1 field is the first value that's being returned right there. There's also down here the grand total. It's not formulated right now. And now in our sum function, it now has data in it. And it's now selecting from the sales table the sales amount. This is exactly what we want to see. So I'm going to click OK. And here is our query right now. It was built for us through that equation editor. With it built, I'm going to click Save Tab. And since we're going to print out a number value, let's format this data to make it look a little more presentable for our output. So I'm going to select the alt tag and come up here and click on Format Data. So just like in Excel, let me just make sure, yep, that's there, and then format. So just like in Excel, we can click on currency, and we can set it to be 2 decimal places. That's fine. Negative number is yes. So we got the formatting as we want. We can click on Apply, close it. And now let's go ahead and bold this grand total as well. So what I'm going to do is, with it selected, I'm going to come up here and click on the Select tag, just to make sure I'm selecting the full tag. And then I'll go to Home and bold this. Now, when I click Output, see what it looks like now. So here's our table with our extra row. Since we added our N for each tag within the table, it's given us this blank extra row, but we utilize that blank row by adding a grand total for all the sales amounts right here. So I think this is a good example for showing you how to conditionally format the text for certain values, like if they're under a certain value, and also for adding a function, a sum function, one of the many functions that you can utilize from within our equation editor. And we have wiki articles that can define what a lot of those functions mean. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this output for the moment. Day 53, we're getting close to the end. A couple more topics to go through. I may go over a little. I'm sorry, but I'd like to get these last few things in. So just to give you a little heads up. So let's go back to our samples button again. So the samples button, you can access it through the auto tag tab right here, and it's also in the auto tag manager tab. So now I want to show you conditionally formatting using if tags and switched case tags. So I'm going to open up to begin with the if tutorial within the SQL tag tutorials. I see a question, and yeah, the answer is yes, and I'll try to show you doing that as I work through the next example. So I'm going to open up this if tag sample right here, and here it gives us step-by-step instructions on how to utilize the if tag. So I want to let's take a look at this first example right here, the if out and ending if tag. Now the if tag is perfect when you want to show or hide specific elements within your template based on some condition within your data. So I'm going to go ahead and select this first if tag. And let's go ahead and see. Excuse me, one moment. Okay, sorry about that. I had a slight cough. So what is this first if tag actually evaluating? So this if tag, if it evaluates to true, then it's going to display what's in between this beginning and ending if tags, which is just this out tag. If this if tag evaluated to false, it would skip over everything from the beginning and ending and display everything that follows. So let's go ahead and take a look at this beginning if tag just to see what we're actually working with. I'm going to preview it. So in this first if tag, we're just evaluating is 1 less than 2. So simple evaluation, yes, could be much more involved, but yes, yes, since 1 is less than 2, this is going to return true. So this means that we're going to display this out tag right here. If it was false, it would have skipped over this out tag and gone on to the next thing after this ending for each tag. Now let's take a look at this out tag, see what it's going to be displaying. Select it, click preview, and here it's just displaying simple text. 1 is less than 2. Okay. So now let's just go ahead and take a look at the output, see what it will generate. So here we just see the simple text in blue that yes, 1 is less than 2. And that was just because this if tag evaluated true, so we displayed this value. Let's look at this next example right here. The output is indicating that 3 is less than or equal to 4. So let's take a look at this if tag and preview it to show us why 3 is less than or equal to 4. So all we're doing on this if tag is, as the output is indicating, 3, this time it's displaying 3 is greater than 4. So since 3 is greater than 4, this is going to return false. So it is not going to display what's here in this first out tag. It's going to skip over it and display what's after the else tag in this out. Let's go ahead and display what this out tag is showing, as we have realized that this if tag is displaying false, so this out tag will be skipped. Let's go ahead and preview it. And here we have our phrase, 3 is less than or equal to 4. which is exactly right here. What if this if tag evaluated true? What will we see? Here, 3 is greater than 4, which isn't true, and so it was skipped to display this other statement. So that's the if tag, and you'll want to use it if you have just 1 or 2 conditions or choices that you want to evaluate. But if you have 3 or more conditions that you need to evaluate, you can use nested if tags, which you see right here, where we have an if tag, an else tag, another if tag, an else tag, and a few end if tags. So this is the nesting going on right here. Instead of using this, we suggest using the switch case tags. I'll show an example of that right now. Let's go back to the samples. And let's go to open this one. So here we have another table containing, it looks like customer information. Let's preview this just to make sure. Okay. And so here we're returning the customer ID, title, first name, last name, suffix, whole bunch of information. And in the table, we're just going to be displaying first name, last name, address, city, state, postal code. But over here in this country column, this is where the switch tags have been added. And all the switch tag does is it just tells Report Designer when to start evaluating these case tags. The switch tag, here's our beginning right here. Here's our ending. And in between these switch tags are our different case tags. So the case tags, it looks like, is actually evaluating the country. So what it's saying is if this record country equals Canada, then it's going to display the Canadian flag. So let's go ahead and look at this value that we're evaluating. I'm going to double click it. So here we have our equal sign, var1, which just refers to this customer loop right here. And what do we want to do? We want to look at all the country region names that equal Canada. So it's checking, does the country region name equal Canada? And if it does, then display the Canadian flag. Then it goes on to check the next, and it'll look at, check to see if the country region name is United States. If so, display the American flag. And then as soon as it meets just one of these cases, it's going to exit the switch statement. First, when it reaches a case, it'll display the flag, exit the switch statement, and then move on to the next item in the list, which is this ending ForEach tag right here, which then tells Report Designer to then loop through these records again, displaying first name, last name, and so forth, get into the country section, going through this switch case check, and then displaying the flag that relates to this country. Let's go ahead and click on the output to see what this looks like. Okay, so here we have our first record in the list, and it's John Yang, and he has the Australian flag right here. And as you can see, just one flag. And If I scroll down farther, we'll see another entry from Lauren Walker, and she has the American flag. And you can tell that she would normally because of her location. So as you can see, as it's going through this, it's evaluating to see which one country this person belongs to, and then it's only displaying those flags. Here's a Canadian example. So just to restate here, we're evaluating 4 case tags. So there's 4 questions or conditions that we're asking. And based on that, we're deciding whether to show or hide certain values based on the country. So that's the switch case tag. And I have one more sample to go over. It'll be quick. I just want to point out one more. So last one we talk about is the import tag. Okay. And it looks like from what we're seeing here, we're importing an image. We're going to import a PDF file. We're going to import a docx text file and a HTML page. Just go ahead and take a look at this output just to see what we have, what we're actually displaying from these import tags. Okay, a couple of things I want to point out. First thing is what you see here in the template is just an image preview. This is actually a tag. So if I was going to go and double click on this image, here you can see the path to that Windward 2 file that's being returned. So here we're just showing you a preview in the template so you can see the image size and the layout for your output. But this is actually a tag right here. And the other thing I want to point out is, you know, here we have our image, and then here we have our importing PDF file where we had an import tag, and then we have importing another template. This type is template, and then we have our docx here. But there is no PDF file. That's not because it's a bug. It's because if you want to import PDF, in order for it to display in the output, you would need to output to PDF. So if I was to come here and change the output to PDF, so yes, and now under our Windward report images, here you can see the PDF that we imported. Here's our table, but here's our PDF. So in order to import PDF, you need to output the PDF. Okay. All right, let's just go back to the slides. Okay, the if tag, I showed you the if tag and how you evaluate when it's true. And when it is true, it shows everything between the beginning and ending if tags. If you have multiple evaluations or conditions that you want to try to check against, for instance, 3 or more, you'll want to use the switch case tags. Here, you may want to take a screenshot of this slide while we're on it, as it does contain some good information to have. So if you want to, here you could go to our windwardstudios.com user support center, and that's a nice location for getting some user support, whether it's submitting a ticket, looking at a knowledge-based article. It's a nice one-page landing spot to send you to different places to help you. If you can always look up information through our wiki. We actually now have 2 wikis out there. There's our original Windward wiki, which is wiki.windward.net. And we have released probably a month or so ago, maybe a little more, our new knowledge base, and that's at ohana.windwardstudios.com. If you can't find what you're looking for through either of these knowledge-based sites, you can always reach out to our amazing support team at support.windwardstudios.com. You can also email them at support@windwardstudios.com. So please, if you have a question that you can't find an answer for, feel free to contact our support team. If you want to retrieve your license keys, if you need to upgrade them, say you're going from a 14 version to 15, you can retrieve those keys from store.windward.net. And if you have any suggestions on or changes that you'd like to see to the product, you could always go to ideas.windward.net and enter in a feature request or a change request. I have one question. Let's go look at the questions. I saw one that has come up. Let's see if there's any others. I just have a second to read it. Okay. Could we rename a ForEach tag? Yes, you can. You can rename any tag. Let's see. Let's go to the equation editor. These all have pretty good names in them, and they actually have been nicknamed. So I'm going to take that out for a minute. So without a nickname, this actually has the salespeople. So let me just create another one. So yes, you can rename any tag, a ForEach tag, a sales tag. These already have nicknames, and you rename them by using this nickname field up here. So if I wanted to change this sales loop for total, let's just call this sum. There we go, sum sales loop. When I change that, you can see down here, it changes the name. So yes, you can rename any tag by selecting it, and then within the auto tag tab, changing the nickname. For each tag, you could put one here on the alt tag. You could even do a nickname here and for each. It just has those dots, but let's go ahead and change it to N for each. And there you can have it. So yeah, that's a good question. And I suggest using nicknames as often as possible. It helps to re-identify the tags, and in case someone else is going to review the template later, by having nicknames, they can more easily determine what is going to be displayed in these for these. Yeah, good question, and yeah, definitely reuse them. Okay, that's all the questions I see. So much, you're very much welcome. There's going to be a short survey at the end of our webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. Any feedback that you can provide will not only help me, but the attendees at the next webinar. Well, I want to thank you all for joining today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and goodbye now.